Hello everyone, welcome back to Rocks on TV. My name is Joe Nakamoto. Today is Thursday, the 2nd of April, 2026, and it's great to be with you all. Let me know from where in the world you are watching today's show. We've got a lot of information to go through as there were some huge moments yesterday. Everything from the quantum alarm going off in the Bitcoin space, blasting new astronauts into space to orbit the moon. That we're going to spend quite some time on this morning. And of course, the news from Iran that supposedly we're closer to a ceasefire. The markets price in otherwise, and then we see Trump going off last night once more. So we're going to be diving into that story as well. It is the block height is 943,339. The Bitcoin price is currently sitting in the $63,000 range. Are we really that low? No way. We can't be that low. Okay, we did actually dip overnight. We're at $66,385. You can check those prices out on Roxxon, by the way. And yeah, you can probably hear my voice today. I'm not feeling myself. A little bit croaky than usual, but that's okay. We can still have a good show together. And yeah, ultimately, before we dive into the roundup, because I'm going to give you the past sort of 24 hours news condensed Roxxon style, I wanted to share with you some of the funnier April Fool's stories from yesterday. Because yes, yesterday, I think most people do April Fools in the morning and the afternoon, you sort of cool off. But of course, America being America, there were lots of corporate ways that massive companies lent into the April Fool's hype. So I've got 5 of my favorite April Fool's jokes yesterday that actually ended up being really clever commercial exercises. The first one, which was the biggest, most headline grabbing one, was Dunkin' Donuts, who we actually reported on this at Rocks on TV yesterday, their plan to give away free coffees. And yesterday they gave away exactly 1,000,001 free coffees using the promo code Still Not a Joke. This +1, the 1,000,001 coffees, was a direct flex on their 2025 million coffee giveaway. And it wasn't actually a prank. This was actually a massive stress test for their mobile app, which did actually briefly crash under the weight of about 1 million caffeine seekers across the US. Let me know if you're watching from the US this morning. If so, wakey, wakey, rise and shine. I hope you got your free Dunkin' Donuts coffee yesterday. But yeah, they played on the April Fools to actually use the day and the virality of their free coffee to stress test their app, which is pretty clever when you think about it, but just so capitalism. Starbucks in Korea, they pranked their fans by announcing the return of the discontinued chai tea latte. What a prank, guys. Well done. The advertisement called it a prank-like return, and the drink actually went on sale for a limited 2-week run. And to drive the point home, the first 30 customers at each location received their tall drink for free. So again, April Fools being used to drive sales, not just to have fun. And of course, Burger King, what did they do? Well, they capitalized on the desperate state of the economy and they ran a half-price Whopper event. The marketing claimed that they were clearing out stock before, wait for the kicker, clearing out stock before the end of the world. A cynical joke that drove massive foot traffic and of course plays into all that fear that everyone is thinking about at the moment, whether it's fear of the future in AI, whether it's the fear of World War III breaking out. So yeah, those were my 3 sort of funniest capitalist April Fool's events from yesterday. When it comes to physical accessories, some people like to sell chocolate toothbrushes, some people like to sell lawnmowers for carpets, all these sorts of weird things. Well, Yahoo, they had quite a funny one. Let me bring it up on screen so you can see it. It was actually quite novel. They have introduced what they are referring to as a scroll stopper. Yeah, this is quite a strange thing, but effectively it allows you to go on social media, etc., and to stop scrolling. I'm trying to bring up the screen just now, but it is not showing it. Bear with me one moment, ladies and gentlemen, while I bring it onto the screen. and we will show that for your viewing pleasure. Here we go. Minimize that. Minimize this as well. And let's get it on the screen just now. So this is a scroll stopper, it's called. And it's a very silly invention that allows you to stop you from doom scrolling. If I can get it a bit more centered. Classic. I can't. Let's see if I click on it and we watch it. It should show it. Yes, it looks centered on the video. Can we hear the video? That's the correct question.
We say it's optional. Yahoo presents the Scroll Stopper. A ring that makes scrolling with your thumbs nearly physically impossible. What could you do if you could stop the scroll? Imagine, no feeds, no screens, no more excuses, no distractions. That's living life. Thumbs up. The Scroll Stopper by Yahoo. Freedom at your fingertips.
There you go. That for me was my favorite April Fool of yesterday, because it just ties into the fact of how culturally accepted it is now to doom scroll, to scroll at will. And therefore Yahoo is selling this scroll stopper, which I think genuinely some people would actually want to buy and would be like, yes, take my money. I am done with doom scrolling. It is a sad state of the world when this is a sort of a meta joke, which also kind of hits hard. They listed this thumb guard, this scroll stopper, as Yahoo call it, for $5 on the TikTok shop, rather, and it's designed to physically present you from doom scrolling. It was a sharp commentary on social media addiction, and it sells this as a cure for scrolling. But naturally, people are scrolling a lot on Yahoo. That's a good place to doom scroll, as well as Instagram, as well as YouTube. And of course, they marketed this on TikTok and on Instagram, the home for doom scrolling. The next one I want to bring up is from T-Mobile's. They call this Cologne. It's a riff on Cologne. Metro by T-Mobile. They released a luxury fragrance called Cologne, which is supposedly smells like a freshly peeled screen protector. The perfume, of course, was a parody, but they used the hype to waive activation fees for T-Mobile users for the day. Let me just full screen myself once more, as we're going to carry on with this rundown of the other sort of silly April Fool's stories that we saw. Because Baskin Robbins, they introduced an ice cream soup. They pitched a canned pre-melted soup for people who are too impatient to wait for their scoop to soften. While the soup was, of course, fake, they did introduce a buy one, get one free 50% off deal on pre-packed quarts, and that was very real. So again, it's another way of using the jokes, the silliness of April Fools, and using it to sell products. And finally, we saw the skincare oil made from tinned fish. It was a partnership between Glossier and Fishwife, and they mocked the eat your skincare trend, but it also doubled as a launch for a very real, dewy face oil. But, it was fish free, naturally. It didn't actually have any sardines in it, because that would be pretty disgusting, I think. But why does this all matter? Why am I giving you a run through of the worst, best, weirdest, strangest, most interesting April Fools of 2026? Well, in 2026, real is the new fake. These companies are using April Fools to bypass consumer skepticism, because by offering a real deal, as Dunkin' Donuts did with their 1 million coffees, behind this facade of a prank, they earn more engagement than a standard advertisement. This is effectively a new form of digital bread and circuses, and it's a way to maintain brand loyalty while the rest of the world feels increasingly unstable. Need I remind you of that joke from Burger King, buy one before the world comes to an end? Pretty grim out there. If you are watching from around the world, please do let me know. I'm curious to hear where you're watching from. And do make sure you are following Roxon TV on all the appropriate social medias. Okay, April Fool's gags out the way. It'd be nice now to discuss the run through of what is going on in the world and why effectively we need to address Iran first. So I'm going to bring up some pictures here and to show you, basically how and ways in which Trump is getting us into more and more trouble. So we've got some lovely graphics to show you, if I'm able to find them. Which I don't be able to find them. Okay, you can't find them. We do have some lovely graphics to show you, but of course, these are hidden away on my laptop in a place that is very hard to find. So I'm going to bring them up in a moment's time. In the meantime, I'm going to run through the stories today, which is from the Trump ceasefire, which was supposedly called for, but ultimately it's not looking good, because yesterday morning the world woke up to a Truth Social post from President Trump claiming that the Iranian president had just asked the United States of America for a ceasefire. Again, Trump mouthing off on Truth Social way before any of us are able to keep up with it, and way before the mainstream media is able to keep up with what is typically his crazy stream of consciousness. Then moving up an image of Trump to show to you just what I mean. So the story is as follows. Trump's response was, of course, a characteristic ultimatum, because the US would only consider the request once the Strait of Hormuz is, in his words, open, free, and clear. Until then, he warned, the US would continue blasting Iran into oblivion. Now, today, the response from Tehran has been rather cold, somewhat of a kinetic refusal, because Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghdadi called the president's claims maximalist and irrational, stating that while messages have been received through intermediaries like Pakistan, there are absolutely no direct negotiations taking place. To punctuate this denial, Iran fired 3 waves of ballistic missiles at targets in Israel over the last 12 hours, and most critically for energy security, an Iranian missile struck a tanker in Qatari territorial waters, which signals that the vessel in the Gulf, that no vessel rather in the Gulf is safe. Brent crude is holding steady at $115, which is so much higher than it was at the start of this conflict. And the clock is ticking towards Trump's April 6th deadline for striking Iranian power plants. You know, the physical world is increasingly finding that petrol is a liability in a kinetic war. Bitcoin, of course, is one of those very few reserve assets that does not require a safe shipping lane. While the rial in Iran evaporates and the dollar is weaponized, and to use Trump's terminology, to blast nations into the Stone Age, Bitcoin remains a neutral, non-state rail. For the global elite and the desperate citizen alike, Bitcoin is one of the only remaining exit ramps from a conflict where the primary weapon is the destruction of physical energy infrastructure. We also, overnight, saw President Trump addressing the nation in what was known as the Paper Tiger Address. The message was a death knell for the post-World War II security order, because following an interview with Daily Telegraph where he called NATO a paper tiger, Trump used his prime time slot to reiterate that US withdrawal is now beyond reconsideration. So is the US withdrawing from NATO, which Trump calls the paper tiger? The trigger, according to the administration, was the cowardice, in his words, of European allies during the Iranian conflict. European nations have reportedly denied the US basing rights. They have refused to send warships to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and they would not let US military aircraft use their airspace for strikes. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he echoed this sentiment, and he called the 77-year-old alliance a one-way street. Now, are we entering a period similar to the fall of the League of Nations in the 1930s? I think that, as Lynn Alden, as Preston Pysh, as many other macroeconomists that also understand Bitcoin suggest, this period of history that we're living in right now today is very much reminiscent of the 1930s, where we saw the League of Nations fall, which then led to, Hitler's rise and then eventually Hitler's invasion of Poland and then the rest of Europe. The League of Nations collapsed because it had no teeth, and the great powers realized that collective security was a myth when national interests diverged. Trump's rejection of NATO, it marks the formal end of the Pax Americana, and it returns the world to a great power competition model where every nation is on its own. It's effectively an awful time for most people on the planet in terms of radical uncertainty, in terms of what's going on, and in terms of what to predict in the future, particularly when you have that coupled with a backdrop of AI and increasing AI power. But it's also a great environment for a stateless currency like Bitcoin to flourish. It's just a question of getting the word out to more people and ensuring that more and more people understand that as we enter this period of great power competition, we need more stateless, decentralized tools such as Bitcoin. Because without the US military umbrella, European nations will be forced to rebuild their own industrial military bases. To do so, they're going to do this in trade in maybe gold, probably dollars, like almost undoubtedly dollars, and maybe even Bitcoin, because they need to access things that are outside that US sphere. So if we are entering, as Trump is alluding to, a post-NATO world, Bitcoin could become the hard money floor for a fractured geopolitical landscape where alliances are replaced by bilateral, maybe even cryptographic trust. Curious to hear what you guys think based off the back of these comments made by Trump yesterday, because it is pretty insane, the idea that we live in a post-NATO world sometime soon. But that's also, the nature of the world we live in is that it's so hard to predict the future nowadays. And those predictions that economists and analysts make tend to be so far from the reality. Okay, moving over to the story, a good news story, thankfully, a good news story, which we definitely needed, because at 6:24 Eastern Time last night, the Kennedy Space Center roared to life. NASA successfully launched the Artemis II mission, which sent Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen on a 10-day loop around the moon. It was actually a rather flawless liftoff, the first time humans have traveled beyond low Earth orbit since 1972. As of this morning, the crew is in high Earth orbit, also known as HEO, and they're performing critical checkpoints of the Orion spacecraft. Within the next few hours, they will execute the translunar injection burn. This is the outbound push that will shoot them towards the lunar environment. The mission is a full-scale rehearsal for the Artemis III landing, which is, you can set your calendars for this, it's planned for 2028. Now, Artemis II is a direct mirror of Apollo 8, because in 1968, almost 50 more than 50 years ago, the US was torn apart by the Vietnam War and domestic unrest. Apollo 8's Earthrise photo gave the world a moment of shared wonder that arguably saved the narrative of that year. In 2026, as we bomb Iran and we litigate citizenship, Artemis II is another attempt by the state to save the narrative by looking up to the stars while the world burns down. So while I'm pretty excited about this launch, and it's bloody cool to see humans being blasted into space and to going into high Earth orbit and eventually to revisiting the moon, maybe even populating the moon in the near future, the optics of this taking place at a moment when the world is probably definitely in a global recession, but no one is actually saying it out loud yet. And in a moment where the war in Iran rages on and splinters into surrounding nations, it does make you wonder why this is happening right now. And if we look back to previous huge spatial or space activities, it also occurred during a period when there was real trouble on the ground. So, is this the first step towards real interplanetary economies, the future that the likes of Elon Musk would envisage? Well, base layers for permanent lunar colonies cannot rely on banking. They're certainly not going to rely on SWIFT transfers or on MasterCard or Visa due to their 3-second latency and their 3 to 5 day settlement. What we need is a lunar appropriate ledger. And for that, it's unlikely it's going to be XRP or Ethereum, guys. Sorry to burst your bombshell. It's much more likely to be, the decentralized nature of something like Bitcoin and the space-based nodes that we already have that are connected via Starlink, because Bitcoin is ultimately the only currency capable of functioning across gravity well. Adam Back, I think, has pontificated in the past about whether or not Satoshi designed Bitcoin for space. I am not on that level of understanding. I just read these things with interest. But the astronauts aren't just carrying oxygen, they could be carrying the precursor to a new financial system that doesn't necessarily end at our so close atmosphere. Okay, we move on to another Trump story, because yes, he's been in the news more and more over the past 24 hours than ever, really. He's just non-stop at it. So we have another lovely picture to show you just now, and this is of the protests outside the Washington yesterday. Apologies, my cold is getting the best of me for sure today. It is tricky, but yeah, there was this sort of the case that's known as Trump versus Barbara, and it's been sort of framed as the birthright reckoning. And yesterday, despite being April Fool's Day, it marked the final stage of oral arguments in the historic case of Trump versus Barbara. President Trump himself attended the proceedings, a first for any sitting president, signaling the stakes of his executive order to end birthright citizenship for children of undocumented parents. Now we have some goings on in the chat. Hello, Max Trotter. He says, Major Tom to ground control, the shit is not working. Very good. Nice David Bowie reference there as well. Nice to be with you today, mate. I hope the weather is all right up in Yorkshire. We are continuing with the birthright reckoning story because observers noted that the Conservative majority appeared skeptical of the government's claim that subject to the jurisdiction of the US, it requires a full allegiance that temporary or unlawful residents cannot provide. However, Justice Alito focused heavily on the use of domicile in the 1898 Wong King Ark precedent, suggesting a potential opening to narrow the definition. The court has now entered its deliberation phase, with a decision expected by June. And as we reported yesterday on Roxham News, this citizenship ruling could affect as many as 2 million Americans. It's a real sort of ground-shaking discussion taking place in the US right now. And it's it basically argues about the idea that if you're born here, you're not from here, which I just find quite hard to wrap my head around. Overturning this would be a return to a blood and soil legal framework not seen in the West since the mid-20th century. It is effectively the formal dismantling of the American idea in favor of a rigid, more ethno-nationalist state structure. I mean, ultimately, like if we look at this development from a Bitcoin lens, this case proves that citizenship is just another row in a government great big SQL database that can be deleted with a vote, a 5-4 vote even. It is effectively a permissioned status. It doesn't offer you a sovereign identity in the way that protocols like Nostr or Bitcoin do. Because in a world where your right to exist in a country can be revoked by an executive order, the only true property you own is that which is secured by private keys. It's the most important tenet of Bitcoin. It's the thing that I bang the drum about every day. But if you're not holding your own Bitcoin, you're not really a sovereign individual. You're not really owning anything, and it can all be taken away if the government so wishes. And we see this time and time again in developed and developing nations around the world. Decentralized identity is part of this solution, and it's no longer some cypherpunk dream. This is increasingly going to be a survival necessity for millions of people around the world. Curious to hear what you guys think, though. Like, why is Trump doing this now? Why is Trump skewing even more and more to the right? I suppose he's pandering to people in his party, or he's just doing Trumpian things. I don't know what to make of it, but that is really quite a astounding thing that the US is taking aim at currently. Alrighty, guys, we are moving on to the AI monopoly. What is going on with NVIDIA? What is going on with OpenAI? Well, while the world focuses on kinetic bombs, while the world focuses on the war in Iran, the compute war is currently being fought out, and it's being fought with capital. NVIDIA announced a $2 billion investment in Marvel technology yesterday, which is essentially, fusion bonding Marvel's networking silicon into NVIDIA's AI factory stack. This is a clear attempt by NVIDIA to lock in the entire AI infrastructure layer from A to Z. Simultaneously, though, you had NVIDIA doing one thing. OpenAI also closed the largest funding round in Silicon Valley history, $122 billion at an $852 billion valuation. Amazon actually led that funding round with $50 billion, but for the first time, OpenAI raised $3 billion directly from individual retail investors. OpenAI is much like these other AI companies. It's currently burning through capital at war speed to secure the data centers and chips necessary for the next phase of GPT-5 development. Now, if we look back through history to sort of make sense of this, then OpenAI and NVIDIA are kind of like the Standard Oil of the 21st century. Because by buying the infrastructure, which is Marvel in this case, and by taking advantage of the capital, which comes from Amazon, they are creating a vertical monopoly that will eventually trigger a massive antitrust backlash. Just as Rockefeller controlled the pipes, NVIDIA now controls the silicon through which all human thought via AI will soon flow. The Bitcoin angle to this is something that I'm still yet to be convinced on, the idea that OpenAI agents and AI agents generally are going to be transacting more and more with Bitcoin. And within that argument is the idea that AI agents are not going to be able to be banked because they can't KYC, and therefore they're going to go to the unbanked solutions, which is the likes of Bitcoin. But I'm not sure. I think that's just a bit of Bitcoin maxis trying to pump their bags somewhat and some cope at the current Bitcoin prices. Okay, we've got a couple more updates from the past 24 hours before we dive into like the actual big stories of the day. This update is something that we're going to cover in the second half of today's show, and that's that Kazakhstan is moving from being a mining colony to a digital financial sovereign. You may remember the news that Kazakhstan's central bank was going to start buying Bitcoin. Not sure if we're any closer to that, but just yesterday, the Kazakhstan Stock Exchange, also known as the KASE or KASE, it has partnered with BitGo, who you may know as one of the biggest custodians in the world, to build a regulated digital asset infrastructure. With trading volume of up to $6.3 billion, the Kazakh Central Bank is preparing to deploy $350 million into BTC directly, which would effectively create a digital Silk Road that bypasses Western sanctions. Do we believe them? Do we believe this is actually happening? Do we have to wait to see that Bitcoin purchase, the addresses being moved on chain? Meanwhile, SpaceX has confidentially filed for its own IPO. It targets a 1.75 trillion valuation, aiming to be the largest listing in history. The company is already seeing explosive growth from Starlink, which now has more than 10,000 operational satellites. However, fresh questions about orbital debris have surfaced after a Starlink satellite reportedly broke apart in orbit this week. It is fascinating to see the SpaceX sort of story and the SpaceX infrastructure program rollout. Like, I've been using Starlink for about a year now, and it is a very reliable, very easy to use service. The idea that Kazakhstan is going into Bitcoin, well, we're going to deep dive into that a little bit later. But for me, the jury is still out. Okay, one more story as part of our recap before we take a quick break, and that is from the Bitcoin treasury firm Nakamoto, led by its CEO, David Bailey, which disclosed a rather disastrous loss in its March 30th SEC filing. You may remember me reporting this on Tuesday, but the firm sold off Bitcoin at an average price of $70,000. Oopsie. That is a massive haircut from their buys at $118,000 last year. They bought the top and they sold not even quite the bottom. They sold close to the bottom. This meant that their stock and their shares have plunged even further. They are 99% down from their 2025 highs, and they now trade at a measly 23 cents. gosh, it really is a story of high leverage versus low time preference. You know, their collapse, it's a cautionary tale of paper hands institutions, because using Bitcoin as a treasury asset requires a low time preference and a debt-free balance sheet. Bailey's firm tried to play the Michael Saylor game without the structural resilience, taking on high interest loans that turned them into forced sellers at the worst possible time. They are currently, along with some of the Bitcoin miners, they are currently the weak hands being flushed out of the system before, hopefully, we get another leg up. But according to Roxom TV just now, let's check out what the Bitcoin price is saying. I think we did drop a solid 2% overnight. Yeah, we did. Currently sitting at 66,401. But when we look at the monthly chart, we did actually get a whopping 1.84% positive on the monthly. So yeah, we're surviving. It was 5 months of pain, 1 month of up. We almost got 6 months red, which would have been the first time in about 8 years since we'd had 6 months red. Okay, I'm going to hydrate, take a quick break, and I'll be back here momentarily to give you some more news, Roxom TV style. We're going to be diving into some interesting stories, actually. There's quite a lot of Bitcoin activity, but ultimately, I'm going to sneeze. Maybe we'll take a break so I can sneeze. We'll be back in 3 minutes so I can sneeze.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Hello everyone, welcome back to Roxom TV, your home for global news, financial news, told through a Bitcoin lens. My name is Joe, and for the next hour and 15 minutes, we're going to be going through the most important news in the Bitcoin crypto financial space. told, of course, through a Bitcoin lens. Now, today so far, we've covered the Artemis 2 launch and the fact that there are now astronauts even out in the higher stratosphere, out in outer space. We've covered the Trump's decision to call NATO a paper tiger, and we covered the ways in which the Iran war is affecting prices of all sorts of things around the world, but notably oil and even gold is dumping right now. I suppose gold is dumping because traders need dollars to cover those increasingly high energy costs. Ah, yes, that was a comment. Trump wanted to blast Iran into the Stone Age. We live in just such a strange timeline. Okay, I now wanted to dive into some of like the sort of do a deep dive into some of the news stories affecting the space over the past 24, 48 hours. The first of which concerns what I was discussing earlier, and that was regarding the should we go Kazakhstan or should we go Google Quantum FUD? Now let's go Google Quantum FUD. This is a story that keeps popping up probably every 2 to 3 months. Every time we get close to exiting the bear market, the Quantum FUD shows its ugly face again. Because, 48 hours ago, the Google Quantum AI team, they published a white paper and a blog post that's now driving a wave of Bitcoin is at risk headlines. The research updates, they estimate that a powerful future quantum computer would break elliptic curve cryptography behind Bitcoin signatures. And it's scary stuff if you read merely the headlines or you read the spin taken from this paper. Because, well, it suggests that Bitcoin's encryption could require fewer than 500,000 physical qubits, which is far, far lower than older estimates. It also models a theoretical attack where a quantum machine could derive a private key from a public key in about 9 minutes. Bear in mind that your private key is, most people know it as a seed phrase. Your public key is usually never used online. I don't think you would ever want to share your public key with anyone. What you usually do is use your hardware wallet to generate a hash of your public key, and that hash of the public key is the address that you share with people to then be paid to. So unless you are using the really old Bitcoin legacy addresses, the P2PK addresses, or some Taproot addresses, I believe, then it's very unlikely that you're ever going to share your public key with the internet. And if you are doing that, please don't. It's not a good idea. But either way, this quantum machine could apparently derive a private key from a public key, which you're not sharing anyway, in about 9 minutes. 9 minutes is sometimes under Bitcoin's 10-minute block time, because the Bitcoin block time is 10 minutes on average, and it is 10 minutes starting from now, or starting from now, or starting from now. That's how the average works. It's a weird thing that is very hard to wrap your head around, but it's always 10 minutes from right now. That's when the next block will become. It's even if 65 minutes pass and there still hasn't been a new block, the time until the next block will always be 10 minutes. Yeah, that's a fun thing to wrap your head around. Either way, this paper estimates that roughly 6.9 million Bitcoin, most of it is Satoshis, it sits in addresses with exposed public keys, meaning that these coins would be the most vulnerable if this kind of machine ever existed. But this is where the gap between theory and reality matters. No such machine exists today. Today's systems, including Google's own Willow quantum processor, are still in the tens to low hundreds of qubits. They're noisy and they are not fault tolerant. The 500,000 qubits estimate also assumes extreme error correction. In practice, one logical qubit requires thousands to millions of physical qubits, pushing real-world requirements far beyond current capabilities. The 9-minute attack also assumes a fully functional quantum computer which targets a specific key. Undoubtedly, if you had this kind of computer, you would target Satoshi's keys because, well, he has the honeypot. He has, over 1 million Bitcoin to his name. But, that machine, as we're saying, it doesn't exist yet. This is still theoretical work based on Shor's algorithm. Nothing has been broken yet. And as many Bitcoin big names continue to say, like, how far away is the threat of quantum computing doing something serious to Bitcoin? Some say 5 years, some say 10 years. some say 20 years. I'm no expert on quantum. I'm just someone who reads about it quite a lot because it tends to dominate our space. But Satoshi talks about quantum computing and its threat back in 2011. There is FUD dice. I don't know if you're familiar with the FUD dice, but FUD dice are this it's a 12-sided dice that you roll it and it'll pop up with China FUD, or nobody uses it FUD, or Bitcoin is for funding terrorist financing FUD, or Bitcoin is for money laundering FUD. And one of the more famous ones is quantum FUD. So we are used to quantum computing being discussed in the Bitcoin space, and it is a regular thing which shows its ugly head, and it calls for huge discourse and debate online. And it's pretty tedious going through it all, but it's kind of interesting to hear about how the quantum FUD develops and the rate at which quantum is being developing. But Google with this paper is not necessarily calling for panic. They said their goal is to support the long-term health of crypto and to spur responsible discussion around quantum risks. And this is not new. It was 2010 that Satoshi quoted, "If it happens gradually, we can still transition to something stronger." Developers are working on this. Developers are preparing. There are proposals like BIP 360 to Merkle Root, which aims to strengthen Bitcoin against quantum threats, with early testing underway. The big issue, though, is this honeypot of the 6.9 million Bitcoin which sit in those addresses with exposed public keys. Could the Bitcoin be stolen from them? Well, technically, if they had this theoretical machine up and running, technically, Bitcoin has gone through various soft forks and upgrades before, including Taproot, including SegWit. This does not impact mining, of course. The only theoretical risk is signatures tied to exposed public keys. I need to sneeze again, apologies. Apologies, everyone. Minor sneeze break there. We're all good, though. Back to the story about quantum, which everybody is talking about all the time. Google is currently operating on roughly 50 to 70 high-quality physical qubits, but they're still noisy and they're not error-corrected. According to their white paper, breaking this cryptography would require on the order of hundreds of thousands of physical qubits, which is around 500,000. So we are not even close. This is still many, many years away, likely at least a decade, even under aggressive assumptions. Now, the classic sort of response to this by lots of Bitcoiners is, "Oh, shut up, it's FUD. Like, move on. It's fine. People are working on it." A lot of others are questioning the motivations behind some of the people pushing this so-called quantum FUD. One of the big ones that people keep calling out is Nick Carter, who just loves the sound of his own keyboard taps. Can't keep him away from wading into the Bitcoin space on all sorts of things. Anyway, Jonas Schnelli, German fella who was a Bitcoin core developer, calls out Nick regarding his sort of financial bias, financial motivations here. He says that Nick led a $20 million round in Project 11, a company that only profits if you believe the quantum sky is falling. Quantum computing is worth watching, but the guy selling the cure has every reason to exaggerate the disease. I think the real key thing that Jonas says here is that QC is worth watching, because he's right. Like, it is important to stay abreast of it. It's interesting, at least, but I think the panic is outrageous and needs to stop. We're not being hacked anytime soon. And as others have pointed out, the paper shared by Google was written by not co-founders, but payees of the Ethereum Foundation. And in case you've been living under a rock recently, you will know that ETH BTC is just bleeding out. Can we see that on screen properly? We can't properly, damn it. Ethereum BTC is not doing so well, so the idea that Ethereum researchers are now calling themselves Bitcoin security researchers specializing in quantum, publishing these reports, which do drive panic, they do drive fear. It makes you wonder what the real motivations are, or maybe it's just that we're all so addicted and we are all so online all of the time that we need that fear in order to take it seriously. Ultimately, Blockstream are working on their own quantum threat proposals. You have Hunter, really nice Bitcoin dev, who is working on Bit 360. Nick Carter will say it's not enough. They need to do more. But who are we to get into this without having a really sound and thorough understanding of quantum computing and the threat? Michael Saylor, for example, still puts his timeline of quantum computing being a threat at 10 years. And he basically urges for caution and for no quick changes to the Bitcoin protocol. And to those people that say, oh, well, if quantum computing is really a thing, why would they hack Bitcoin first? Well, I think they'd hack Bitcoin first because it is decentralized. This is the funny thing, right? They could go after rather centralized databases, but centralized databases can be changed quite quickly and quite easily. Bitcoin, however, can't be changed as quickly. And the bounty or the honeypot of the coins that are at risk from quantum, it's about $500 billion. So it's not to be sniffed at. Would this spell the end for Bitcoin? No, it would just mean that those Bitcoin are stolen. Which is nothing new. Bitcoin is stolen all the time. So does this spell the end of Bitcoin? No, of course not. Does it spell a need for change in Bitcoin? Yes, definitely. And ultimately, you've got to focus on the fact that these papers are still all very, very theoretical. It's like I, in theory, could become the world's fastest cyclist. But in reality, no, that's going to take a lot of time, training, and genetics that I don't yet possess. So, theoretically, yeah, quantum, real big issue. In reality, practically, today, not a big issue. We need to just keep working on it, keep researching, keep developing, keep sharing, and keep working in the open as well, because ultimately this is an open source project, and we're going to do a lot better from it if we are able to share our resources publicly. Okay, let's move on from quantum because it gives me a quantum headache. Am I right? I'm just kidding. But here we go. We are having the Kazakhstan story up next, which we briefly covered in the intro and the sort of preview of today's show. But I think it's particularly interesting because maybe it spells the beginning of other central banks taking Bitcoin more seriously. The story is as follows. Kazakhstan is building Bitcoin rails with BitGo. So you might have noticed 4 months ago, that Kazakhstan was reportedly about to buy some Bitcoin. It was going to, build up to $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, which would follow the Czech National Bank, which has looked at Bitcoin and looked at buying Bitcoin for its reserves. And it would also follow the US, which has its stolen Bitcoin reserve. I think they're supposed to call it strategic, but it ended up just being stolen. But anyway, Kazakhstan's stock exchange just tapped BitGo to build its digital asset infrastructure. The same country is now building a sovereign fund that could reach up to $1 billion, backed by Bitcoin mining revenue and seized assets. Kazakhstan has historically benefited from Bitcoin mining bans in China, Bitcoin mining bans across the East and Eastern Asia generally, as miners will often hop over the border to Kazakhstan to continue their mining operations. I know quite a few Bitcoin miners actually from Kazakhstan, some of whom were mining with coal, even some were mining with oil and gas, which is probably not the best optics in 2026. But as the entire world realizes that renewable energies are, yes, completely inflexible, and that is a bit annoying, but also ultimately the cheapest form of electricity, like Kazakhstan as well is pivoting more and more to that style of mining, to renewable energy mining. And within that, you have flare gas mining, which is a great way of protecting the environment because methane is 60, 70 times more harmful to the environment than CO2. So we need to do more to stop flared gas and instead turn that into Satoshis. Wouldn't that be nice? But the story is as follows. Like the Kazakhstan Stock Exchange is the second largest exchange in the former Soviet states by securities trading volume. So it's not to be sniffed at. This move towards Bitcoin, towards BitGo, is part of a much larger national strategy. Kazakhstan's trading volume on regulated digital asset platforms has exploded recently, from roughly $300 million in 2023 to nearly $7 billion in the first 3 quarters of 2025. That's quite a large jump in just the past 2 years. In January, the president, and got to be careful with my pronunciation here, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev signed new legislation giving the central bank authority to license exchanges and decide which digital assets can trade on regulated platforms. The country is also building the rails behind the market. A national custodial service is expected to launch as early as May. At the same time, the central bank is preparing to deploy up to 350 million into digital asset investments. And a sovereign fund between £500 million and $1 billion is being structured, funded in part by seized assets and mining revenue. Now, Kazakhstan, as I mentioned in the prelude to this story, it has been a major mining hub, Bitcoin mining. It also has rare earths. In 2021, it controlled a whopping 18% of global mining after the 8th ban of Bitcoin mining in China. Today, that share is a lot smaller, but it's still meaningful, roughly 3 to 6% of global hash rate. Now, Kazakhstan is moving up the stack from energy and hash rate into custody, exchanges, and then capital allocation. So it's quite interesting to see a nation state on a global scale developing and being effectively more and more orange pilled by Bitcoin. You start with mining, for example, and then you go into exchanges, then you go into payment rails, and you maybe go into like custody. This is what we're seeing with Kazakhstan right now. That they've been mining in the country for a good 10 years now, and now they're slowly expanding into other areas. Now, BitGo, which is one of the oldest Bitcoin custodians in the world, they custody a lot of Bitcoin. They framed the partnership as part of a global shift. Posting on Twitter, BitGo said, exchanges and financial institutions around the world are evaluating how digital assets and blockchain technology can modernize market infrastructure. BitGo is partnering with Kazakhstan Stock Exchange to help make that a reality in Central Asia's leading regulated exchange. Under the deal, BitGo will provide cold storage, policy-based governance, and asset segregation for the KASE, which is the Kazakhstan Stock Exchange, under this 3-year agreement. All right, I'm going to jump into the chats now. Oh, we've got a comment about Blockstream. So Blockstream's Lightning implementation on Jade software is terrible. I wish they'd focus on getting simple stuff usable instead of Liquid, etc. Why is it terrible? Is it because it's using Liquid? I mean, the Liquid, by the way, is, I know like everyone calls it like the centralized Blockstream thing, but it's incredibly private. Like, if you're using Bitcoin with Liquid, you're using it in arguably one of the easiest to use private formats. So I do rate it for that. I've not actually used their Lightning implementation on their Jade yet, and I'm actually going to start working with Blockstream on my YouTube channel, separate to Roxon TV, in the near future. I really like their Jade wallets because I think they're affordable and they work really, really well. So like I always recommend them to people, and I recommend them way more than bloody ledgers. Ledgers are awful. Do not go there at all. And they're easier to use than, say, a cold card. Very safe, open source, air gap, blah, 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 all the good stuff. But I've not tried the Lightning implementation yet. But as I understand it, it's a way of being able to use Lightning with your hardware wallet. Is that right? But why do you wish they'd focused on getting simple stuff usable instead of Liquid, Arthur? Why is that your question? Hello to Plastic. He says, be well, bro. Am I all right? Yeah, I am. I'm, as you can probably hear, I'm fighting off a bit of a cold, but I think that's just with the changing of the seasons and with us going into the spring, because spring has sprung in Portugal where I am. It's certainly a lot warmer, but you do get really cold evenings and really cold mornings. Whereabouts in the world are you based, mate? You can make it up if you don't want to tell me the real truth. It's okay. I know what Bitcoins consider when it comes to privacy and ensuring that, we don't dox ourselves too much. Okay, so we've covered Kazakhstan and building these Bitcoin rails with BitGo. We've covered the Google quantum paper sparking a Bitcoin FUD. Next up, we're moving on to whether or not you can hack a Trezor wallet. Yeah, this is a super interesting story that I've been following for, is it 5 years now? It's 5 years now, mad, from a YouTuber who has been cracking Trezor wallets and documenting it online. But we're going to take a quick break so I can go blow my nose and sort out my life, basically. See you in 3 minutes, guys, where we will discuss that Trezor story.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Hello everyone, welcome back to Roxon TV. Don't know why we've got a participant showing there, that's not okay. Lovely to be with you this morning, Arthur, Plastic and Max. If anyone else is watching, drop a comment. I'm always curious to see where you are in the world. We have covered so much around the world, from space launches to Trump going crazy about Iran to April Fools, an April Fools roundup of all the weirdest and most wonderful April Fools from yesterday, as well as their corporate reasons for doing so. What I wanted to share to you now is something that I don't see many people reporting on, and it certainly caught my eye. So we have a guy on YouTube who has some serious hacker skills. He has been hacking Trezor wallets. You can see these videos now on screen, and this guy has been at it for quite some time, where 4 or 5 years ago, he did this video called How I Hacked a Hardware Crypto Wallet and Received $2 million. That went super viral, 10 million views, which in our niche Bitcoin crypto space, that is a lot. 2 weeks ago, he released his $75 million crypto wallet bulk hack. I sat through that entire 38-minute video. I watched the half of the shocking result of my $75 million bulk hack video. And then I reached out to the guys at Trezor to understand how this cypherpunky hacker type was able to hack into what I thought was a very secure wallet. And before I explain what the Trezor guys have told me, because some of my mates work at Trezor, they're good people, you know, they produce excellent hardware, and ultimately these guys built the first hardware wallets. The holding company of Trezor is called Satoshi Labs. You know, they've been around for 14 years now, and they have been instrumental in making it so that self-custody and being able to hold your own coins is easier and easier for everyone around the world. And yet here there is this guy on YouTube getting hundreds of thousands of views and showing us that you can in fact hack these wallets. So what's going on here? Well, the hardware wallet world has been set ablaze by these two new videos from this hardware hacker called Joe Grand. Some people also call him the Kingpin, because in this latest series, which is titled $75 million Crypto Wallet Bulk Hack, Joe Grand demonstrates a sophisticated methodology for recovering funds from those locked Trezor devices. Now, it's not the official response. I was just messaging some of my mates that work at Trezor, and I was like, how are they getting into this? And they said, as far as I know, it is some old, exploited, and mitigated by the passphrase, as has always been the case. So to understand if you are safe and if your funds are safe if you're using a Trezor, because you might watch this and go, ooh, maybe my Trezor funds aren't safe. Maybe I need to update them in some way. Well, we've got to look a little bit under the hood. We've got to look under the hood of the hardware evolution. We've got to understand what's really going on here, because the technical reality of this hack is actually a bit more obscure, and it probably doesn't apply to your current Trezor. This grand hack specifically targets the older Trezor Model 1 and the Model T. You might have, if you've been in Bitcoin for more than 5 or 6 years, you might have these models. I've played with them in the past. They're decent hardware wallets. But these devices rely on what's called the STM32 family of microcontrollers. And Joe Grand, the hacker in these videos, actually brings this up. They have a known hardware vulnerability, and it's called voltage glitching. In the videos, which you might have seen, maybe you're going to watch them later, they're actually quite entertaining, and it's quite cool seeing people reunited with their long lost funds that they thought were lost forever. You know, some of the guys that get their money back, they end up deciding to give some to charities, some to buying, you know, nurseries for their kids, because, you know, the funds have been gone for 5 or 6 years. One of the stories is pretty grim, and it's the fact that this one guy bought 1 Bitcoin for each of his kids, put it on different Trezors, and used a passphrase, lost the seed phrase, and then the guy that helped him set up the Trezor had basically stolen that Bitcoin from him. And the reason why he stole it was because he called this guy that set up his Trezors and said, hey mate, I can't remember the password, I think the Bitcoin's gone. And the then thief was like, oh, if he doesn't think he's got that Bitcoin, I'm going to steal it. And so he disappeared with effectively $500,000. But basically, the way in which the hack works, this voltage glitching thing, was that the hacker uses a tool to drop the power supply to the chip for a few nanoseconds to the exact moment the chip is checking its internal readout protection bit. And by glitching the chip, the hacker tricks the CPU into skipping the security check, which allows the internal memory, which contains the seed, to be dumped. Now, Trezor's new lines, the Trezor Safe 3 and the Safe 5, they introduce a dedicated secure element, which is the Optega Trust M element. So unlike the older models, these hackable models, the Safe 3 and the Safe 5, they do not store the decryption secret purely on the main MCU. The secure element stores a separate secret that is required to decrypt the data on the main chip. So there's a certain level of tamper resistance going on here as well, because the secure element is certified to EAL6+, meaning it is designed to resist precisely this kind of fault injection and the side channel analysis that Joe Grand, this hacker, does in those YouTube videos. So are you at risk? Are you worried? Let's dive into the chat and see what people are saying here. Ooh, Arthur. He says, there's no way of converting Bitcoin to Lightning Sats without Liquid. The desktop app can't do it all, and the phone app is complex and buggy. I have the new and the old Jade, and neither have user-friendly apps. Oh man, I'm sad to hear that. That's tricky. Yeah, let's hang out in Madeira. Yeah, I guess you're living over there. Why is it that the Blockstream wallet is hard to use in such a way? Meanwhile, Rafa is here. Hello, mate. Arthur says, I'll stalk you, Madeira, and feed you, pay you to explain this to me. Okay, maybe I should talk to Blockstream first. Like maybe email me and I'll share it with the Blockstream guys, because I'm talking about them at the moment because I'm trying to get sponsorship from them because I want to work with them. I've always thought they were good wallets, but it's good to get user feedback like this. I like Liquid, for example. I think it's really useful. I've seen people use Liquid, but it is slower. There's no doubt about it. It is slower. But Lightning, yeah, it's wicked. But Lightning is, most people use it custodially. Most people don't use it very privately. And Liquid is a nice workaround from Liquid to Lightning and vice versa. Okay, back with the story. Do any of you guys have a model, a Trezor Model 1? Because you could be at risk, but only if this guy gets hold of your wallet and you ask him nicely to hack into it. Because even if you own an older Model T Trezor, not a Tesla, Model T Trezor, the ultimate defense is what is known as the BIP39 passphrase. So your seed phrase is the 24 words. The BIP39 passphrase is the 25th word. And that is never stored on the hardware chip at all. So if an attacker can glitch your device, as Joe Grand did, and dump the memory, they only get the 12 or 24 words. Without the passphrase, which only exists in your head, they can still never access your Bitcoin. So what Joe Grand is doing is he is doing this interesting sort of electricity hack voltage thing, voltage glitching, then getting into those old devices. He can't get into the newer Trezor Safe 3 and Trezor Safe 5 devices either. Needless to say, I think the Trezor marketing department is just ignoring this because they probably dealt with it 5 years ago when he first released his video. And with the Trezor Safe 3 and the Trezor Safe 5, you can't hack into them in the way that he is doing. He is still, however, managing to return people to their funds and presumably taking a finder's fee along the way. And it's something that I think is worth talking about because security in the Bitcoin space is, of course, paramount. And while more and more people are trusting custodians and BlackRock and Coinbase, there's also cases where we can hack into hardware wallets, as this Joe Grand is doing. So yeah, if you've got some weekend plans, why not queue them up? It's interesting how this guy goes into it. It's very interesting. Okay, moving on to another story, and this is regarding altcoins. So not spoiler alert. So if you've got crypto in your portfolio, then I feel for you right now. Arthur says, Joe Grand is great, but I've moved my stuff off of Trevor's because he proves how vulnerable they are. Interesting. Even the Trezor Safe 3 and the Safe 5. Let's see. Let's see if they still sell them. Curious. Let's share this tab instead. Let's go onto the Trezor wallet together, the website, and see if they actually do sell these wallets still. That's the new one, isn't it? I believe that's the new one. Blah, blah, blah. Why can't you just buy it easily? Why do these websites also make it so hard to buy? Wow, a new hardware wallet is now €250. That is interesting, to say the least. Okay, so they are now only selling the Trezor Safe 7, which presumably does not have all these issues. You can get a Bitcoin-only edition without shitcoins for €250, or a green one or a black one for €200 as well. Not that you're ever going to sort of flash this and share it to your friends, but this is why I like the Jade. You know, it's a lot cheaper. A lot cheaper. Okay, let's go towards the bloodbath that we're watching in the crypto space just now, because I don't know if you saw, guys, but XRP is dumping hard. Some shed more than 20% of their value in the last 48 hours. And you know what? Let's bring up a place where I used to live a lot as a crypto journalist on the website just now. So this is CoinMarketCap, which lists all of your favorite shitcoins in one space. And you can see the sea of red that we are observing right now. We can't show the full thing on screen. Yes, we can. Oh, you're going to struggle to see that unless you're watching on a massive TV. Sod it. We'll show that anyway, just so you can see the incredible sea of red that is the crypto show right now. You know, as you know, Bitcoin dumped, 4% in the past 7 days, 3% in the past 24 hours. But XRP, ouch, it did momentarily dip to $1. Solana is still, wow, it's well under $100 now. It's at $78. And Ethereum, of course, is at $2,000. If we look at these things relative to BTC, that's where it becomes more interesting, in my opinion, because we know that ETH BTC is trending down and down and down, it's still just a struggling cryptocurrency when measured in Bitcoin, which is arguably a better measuring stick. Why? Because Bitcoin has a hard cap. It has a fixed supply of 21 million, whereas all of these other cryptos can be inflated into infinity if they so wish. But what is catalyzing this sort of bloodbath in the crypto space? Well, firstly, we had the quantum alarm, which was the Google white paper that was shared on March 31st. And that specifically targeted this elliptic curve cryptography. We have talked about this a lot. And while Bitcoin, we know, is working on a soft fork, the complex smart contract structures of Solana and Ethereum, they make a clean quantum migration quite difficult to engineer, although it is technically possible. We're also seeing, with the war in Iran escalating, with NATO perhaps fracturing, global liquidity is fleeing centralized or foundation-led coins, and it could be going into Bitcoin, which is the only truly leaderless asset. Like, the Lindy effect is at play here, though, right? But this is why we're in Bitcoin. This is why we mostly only hold Bitcoin. In a bear market fueled by existential, geopolitical, and technological threats, the market recognizes that XRP has a CEO, has a company, has Ripple. What's his name? Brad Garlic Breath. No, Garlinghouse. Sorry, slip of the tongue there. I didn't mean to say Brad Garlinghouse. I meant to say Garlic Breath. I meant to say Garlinghouse. There you go. And I'm sorry, that was a really poor joke in poor taste. Solana has a centralized validator set, and Ethereum has, of course, not a CEO, but a leadership roadmap that is increasingly dependent on layer 2 centralization. Bitcoin has its block clock, effectively, has its mempool. It does have the devs working on these new soft forks, but it's also the best asset there is. So this is why we're Bitcoin. This is why we don't want to cover the likes of XRP, which many analysts are saying could drop to $1, which is pretty grim. The Crypto Basic, one of those big Bitcoin traders and crypto traders, said this morning on Twitter, he said, the broader bullish structure remains valid only if XRP holds above the 93 cents level. That would act as the main invalidation point. Remember, XRP had the mother of all pumps a couple of years ago when it got sort of more integrated into the US and to the US institutions, but it is a centralized shitcoin with a CEO, with a roadmap, with everything else, and with a distribution model when it first listed, which was pretty grim, to say the least. Less said about XRP, the better. Am I right? Okay, Arthur has jumped into the chat to say, I live in London, Hertfordshire, but I'm looking for a nearby winter retreat, so Madeira is top of the pops right now. Wholeheartedly agree, mate. Although the winters in Madeira are still tricky, it's obviously not a London winter, but the houses aren't necessarily built for warmth, and the houses are built more for summertime than they are for wintertime. Okay, let's move over to Taiwan now. What is going on in Taiwan? Could they be adopting a Bitcoin sort of strategy or a Bitcoin development in the future? This caught my eye from Samson. Samson is, of course, a restaurant influencer. I'm just kidding, Samson. He is a guy that takes pictures of coffees in interesting places all around the world. And recently, he was in Taiwan. He was also talking about quantum while he was there. But the main thing I want to bring on screen just now is that he shared the following. He said, many thanks to the legislator at DAAAB for hosting me at the Legislative Yuan to speak on nation-state Bitcoin adoption strategies for Taiwan. Dr. Ko is a great ally and works to advance Bitcoin adoption in Taiwan, engaging with the central bank and other branches of the government. Just before that, he also shared, Taiwan already holds 210 Cs Bitcoin, and the conversation around building a larger reserve is growing. That was shared from the Jan3 Twitter account, which their job typically is to help countries adopt Bitcoin as a nation-state asset. And at this seminar that was in Taiwan's legislative, Lawmakers often rely on traditional frameworks and treat Bitcoin as fiat currency, a stock, or a bond. But Bitcoin's true nature is information. It's a new form of money. It's trying to restrict the flow of information. That is a losing battle. So is Taiwan close to announcing that it will buy more Bitcoin? What do we make of this, guys? I think this is another, you've got to show me the receipts. Otherwise, I just do not believe you. But there was also, like, to couple with this story from Samson touring Taiwan, having dinner with legislators, speaking to central banks. Bear in mind that Taiwan is kind of like a more nimble China. Oh, I'm going to trigger some people by saying that. I should be careful with my wording here. Taiwan is it's a small island in the South China Sea, and the conflict, the tensions between Taiwan and China are obviously very high right now. But maybe it seeks this neutral reserve asset as a way of strengthening itself. And what would happen in terms of dominoes falling if Taiwan were to announce that it is looking to Bitcoin? Because presumably the BRICS currencies and the BRICS nations, which are stacking gold reportedly in increasing levels, what would happen if Taiwan was to say, you know what, sod the gold thing, we're going to go all on Bitcoin? It would be quite a big domino to fall. This is not an El Salvador, which, don't forget, El Salvador's GDP is nada compared to Taiwan. El Salvador has what, GDP of 40 billion. Taiwan's GDP, 850 billion, which should reach 960 billion by 2030. So this is by no means a teeny tiny nation that people can point to and be like, meh, whatever, it's just another El Salvador. Remember when Central African Republic, remember when they adopted Bitcoin? Did it move the needle? No, of course not. Central African Republic is one of the poorest, most underdeveloped countries in the world. Outside of the capital city, there are no roads. So yeah, it's not exactly going to be like a huge move in the Bitcoin space. It's not going to turn heads, and it's not going to convince people to take Bitcoin more seriously. Taiwan, however, that is an interesting development and something that I'd be curious to follow. So there was an article that followed up this sort of Taiwan story that came from my former employer, my lovely Cointelegraph, Cointelegraph, as I used to refer to them as. There was a bombshell report by the BPI. So Bitcoin Policy Institute is this great institute from the US filled with young guys who grew up Bitcoin, who come from former professional careers. And Jacob Langenkamp, who works for the BPI, he argues that Taiwan must adopt a strategic Bitcoin reserve to survive a potential PRC, so People's Republic of China, blockade. And the logic of this geopolitical resilience is as follows. Firstly, Jacob points out that in a blockade, if it were to happen, Taiwan's gold is physically stranded and its USD reserves could be frozen by the Fed, or of course they could be sanctioned into oblivion. There's a digital porthole in the form of Bitcoin though, because Bitcoin, it's the only reserve that remains fully accessible and spendable without physical transport. So Jacob Langenkamp from the BPI puts it as follows. Bitcoin can couple with gold to offer that hedge against US dollar debasement. And of course, as he suggests, US dollar being frozen. This timing of this report, the timing of the BPI commenting on Taiwan is interesting, given that the CEO of Jan 3, as I mentioned, Samson Mo, apologies, I need to sneeze again. No, we're good, but we might have to go for a sneeze break in a moment or two. Yes, CEO of Jan 3, Samson Mo, was spotted in Taipei. He was meeting with the tech leaders, meeting with the central bankers. And Samson Mo's mission, it has always been, since 2020, 2021 now, it's been all about nation state adoption. And his presence there suggests that behind the scenes, Taiwan's leadership is beginning to take the 210 BTC, which is currently held by the Ministry of Justice. So if they have 210 BTC, guys, quick question for you guys in the chat. What percentage of the entire supply does Taiwan currently hold? So if they hold 210 BTC, What percentage of the entire supply do they currently hold? Drop your comment below. We'll math check it together, but it's a relatively easy one. But yeah, that the Bitcoin they currently hold could be a seed for a larger reserve. It's very similar to the way that the US approached their strategic reserve. Meanwhile, Plastic in the chat, he says, did you see Nayib Bukele's new video post? No, but should we watch it on here live together? Because these are always controversial and always tend to turn heads in the Bitcoin space. I am quite outspoken when it comes to El Salvador. I'm firing up his Twitter account now. Which video are we talking about? This guy is more active on Twitter than anyone. It is mad. Presumably it's this one here. Let's watch it together and comment. Let's bring it up on screen. Can you see my screen? You can. Fantastic. Let's see if you can hear the sound. Is this the video we're talking about? Okay, propaganda from Philip. Yeah, we are watching. Okay, so we're watching the removal of old statues. Is that right? I don't know what these statues are of. Why has he not shared what they are? But to translate his Spanish here, he says, to build is brave. To restore, or to, you know, refurbish, restore, is admirable. But to remove and to eliminate the horrors and the ugliness, it is essential. And so he's basically removing some old statues. Why? I've never seen these statues before. Where are they in the capital? Where are they in El Salvador? I don't know what to make of it. Yeah, like if he's removing relics of the past, good for him. But are these relics from? Are they? I saw the soldiers in the video there. Was that a reference to the wars? I'm not really sure, but maybe it's a question of him rewriting the past. I don't know what to make of it. I thought you were going to show me a Bitcoin video there, mate. So I'm a little bit surprised as to why it's a lady that looks a bit like a mermaid and some soldiers, statues being removed instead. But, you know, Nayib is increasingly a dictatorial figure. You know, he calls himself El Dictador. And if he wants to rewrite the past, then that is also straight out of the dictator's playbook. Presumably that's the angle we're going down here. The idea that, you know, the guy is now taking the relics and the statues and the monuments of the past, bringing them down to pave roads. It's quite a China approach, isn't it? Quite utilitarian in its approach to management. But yeah, it's pretty strange. I don't know what to make of it, Plastic, to answer your question. We watched the video together and I don't really know. Sorry, mate. I'm pretty good on Bitcoin in El Salvador, but when it comes to Bukele in El Salvador, you know, a third of the world calls him a dictator. Another third of the world calls him the best leader that Latin America currently has. And the other third of the world is probably on the fence or just totally unaware, because ultimately this is still a teeny tiny nation in the middle of Central America with not a lot of exports and a huge amount of debt, like a disgusting amount of debt. And its debt to GDP levels are increasing at a really, really increasing rate. So he's going to have some trouble on his hands if he doesn't sort of rein that in soon. But you also have a populace in the country that is very, very happy, very, very pleased that Bukele continues to do his thing. We are going to take a very quick break while I blow my nose and recover from this cold. And then we'll be back for the remainder of our show today, where we'll be focusing on the global news and the financial news told through a Bitcoin lens. See you in 3 minutes, guys. Tissues.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Hello everyone, welcome back to Roxom TV, your home for global news, for financial news told through a Bitcoin lens. My name is Joe. We are here live with Arthur, with Plastic, with a few others around the world, and we are going to be diving into the most important news that occurred over the past 12 hours. So since we woke up in the middle of the night, we didn't wake up in the middle of the night, we woke up this morning. We have some news from San Francisco, from the Bay Area first, where there was quite a large earthquake in the early hours of the morning there. This should be showing on screen just now. Apologies for my croakiness. I'm still battling off a cold here. But yeah, there was a strong earthquake jolting the Bay Area in the early morning hours. So at 1:41 local time, a magnitude 4.9 earthquake struck just outside Boulder Creek, California. That's about 60 miles south of San Francisco. If you head out of San Francisco on the wonderful Highway 1, which you must do before you die, then you will eventually come past Boulder Creek, California. And this actually jolted millions of Bay Area residents awake. The tremor was shallow, however, less than 7 miles below the surface, which is why it was felt so widely. There's been no major damage nor deaths reported so far. And the United States Geological Survey Agency estimates a 60% chance of a magnitude 3 or higher aftershock in the next week, and a 2% chance of something stronger than a 4.9. The Bay Area sits on some of the most seismically active land in the world. To everyone who is in San Francisco right now, of course, it's important to stay safe and make sure to practice your drop, your cover, and your hold on. Familiar terminology for those of you living in the Bay Area, where it is just quite common to have earthquakes. Where I live in Portugal, we also get, I was going to say regular, but they are probably once a year earthquakes. And it's always pretty odd when they do hit. Lisbon apparently is due another huge earthquake to mimic the one of, I want to say, the year 1755. I think it's around that date. That was the last huge earthquake to rip through Europe, which in many ways redefined the landscapes around Lisbon and famously led to the rebuilding of Lisbon, as was a huge fire afterwards. So scary stuff, but also relatively routine for the residents of the Bay Area. Now, our next recap story is a good news one. It's about the Artemis moon sort of exploration program. And we have a clip from YouTube here to explain just how cool this event was. Can you imagine watching this rocket from the Kennedy Space Center? I would love to be there personally to get a sense of what it means to have so many pounds of force driving these astronauts into space. So let's take a closer look. So cool. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, yeah, I would love to just watch this rocket take flight. Instead, we'll stop on this freeze frame of this rocket with its millions and millions of pounds of fuel, driving it into the stratosphere and then eventually to space. Because yeah, this is a momentous piece of news. Yes, you could argue that it's distractionary from all of the things taking place in Iran and at the pumps and in the quantum space in Bitcoin right now. But also let's celebrate it for a moment because NASA's Artemis 2, it lifted off yesterday at 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time from Kennedy Space Center in the first crewed mission to travel towards the moon since Apollo 17, which was way back in December 1972. The 4 astronauts are now in high Earth orbit, preparing for a translunar injection burn tonight that will push them out of Earth's gravity towards the moon's gravity. So that's going to be the second sort of big push. First one is getting up into the stratosphere, then into Earth's gravity orbit, and then towards the moon. They're currently orbiting the Earth right now, which apparently takes 24 hours, which I thought was quite interesting because, you know, of course, that's a day. Is that how it works? So they're just literally tracking the Earth's gravity? Presumably, that's how it works. I didn't study physics past the age of 17, so I need to revisit some physics textbooks to understand what's actually going on here. But the crew will loop around the far side of the moon and set a record for the farthest distance humans have ever traveled from Earth, 252,000 miles. That is, oof, how many trips to Australia is that? A couple of thousand. Anyway, splashdown in the Pacific is scheduled for 8 days' time on April 10th. And that splashdown will set another record, which is that the Artemis 2 will reach the Earth at the fastest speed that any space shuttle with humans in it has ever reached. So that splashdown as well could be quite sketchy, to say the least, and will be an interesting, another interesting video feed to follow. Trump opened his national address last night by congratulating the crew. And of course, the mission did launch on April Fool's Day, but it was very far from a joke. Okay, third story that you need to understand today to get a sense of what people are going to be talking about at the water cooler or just with friends and family. It's, of course, that Trump reckons that the war in Iran is nearing completion. I'm doing that in air quotes in Mr. Evil way. Because yeah, this was Trump addressing the nation on the Iran war, looking as impressive as ever. And we're going to jump to a line in the clip here, which is more important, which is the 15-minute mark. And Trump. Right. I actually couldn't believe this phrase when I first heard it. Well, I actually first read it. as we're gonna, bring these guys back to the Stone Ages. What? So yeah, this is the leader of the free world calling about how he's gonna put a nation back to the Stone Ages where they belong. I couldn't believe it. I had to go and watch the clip, and there we are sharing the clip on Roxxon TV to prove to you that yes, Trump did actually say that in his first primetime address. Yeah, he did this at, is it 9 p.m.? Yeah, 9 p.m. US time, because he wanted as many eyeballs as possible to make it look as epic as possible, that what he's doing in Iran is justified, incredible, it's the best thing ever. And yes, on national TV at 9 p.m., he also said we're going to bring them back to the Stone Age. It's just insane propaganda, insane, lexicon from the president at that primetime address. That talk, that address lasted 19 minutes, and for many analysts watching around the world, it didn't contain anything new and actually led to quite a bit of uncertainty. The markets were pretty rocked by this because his rhetoric, it's more of the same since the start of the war. We covered the 15-point peace plan that he put to Iran last week, that Iran sort of mocked and then rejected. But he wants Iran to be eviscerated. He reckons that regime change has occurred. In a way, it has, in the sense that they killed the old supreme leader, but his son is now replacing him. And again, he shared the war is nearing completion. He reckons it could be another 2 weeks. Yes, stocks did rally yesterday morning, and the S&P had a pretty good day, but then stocks futures fell. So the US is going to hit Iran extremely hard for 2 to 3 more weeks. That's a sort of the headline that we're going to be reporting on. We're going to see more and more destruction from. And Trump also, in this address, he told the allies to go and take the strait themselves. He called rising gas prices short term, which, let's be honest, is a great big Pinocchio-sized fib. And he presented no exit strategy. He presented no specific timeline, and he was unable to comment on this deal that reportedly he's been formulating with Iran via the go-between of Pakistan. Ultimately, we didn't glean much from this address other than it was just some prime time propaganda. The price of Brent crude, it rose to $105 immediately after the speech, and then stock futures fell. Americans are not happy about this war, and Trump's approval ratings continue to topple lower. As the writer of the book, In Trump We Trust, Ann Coulter, she put it, that Trump's magnificent speech, it got results. So yeah, the propaganda is just so absurdly high now from the US regarding this war that I don't know how many people in the US wanted it, don't know how many in the US still are keen for it to go on. And as Trump said earlier this week, there are going to be troops on the ground. There are going to be at least military advisors in Iran soon. And maybe he takes Karg Island. Maybe he doesn't take Karg Island. The fog of war continues, and it's unclear what the outcome of this current offensive that's going to last the next 2 weeks is going to be. Pause for sneeze. Apologies to viewers and listeners. I had to take a very brief pause to sneeze there. We're back with you. We're back doing the rundown of the past sort of 12 hours news. This is relevant to those of you waking up in the US, and also relevant to those of you who have missed out on Trump's address yesterday. Our next story, it comes to you from The Guardian, and it's a story that beggars belief. But this is The Guardian. They do tend to be pretty good when it comes to reporting. Obviously, they take a very, very left slant, but this is the news. This is what we're reporting right now. The world's oldest tortoise was caught in viral crypto death scam. I'm going to say that headline once more because I'm going to relish it, as it's something I never thought I'd say in my lifetime. World's oldest tortoise caught in viral crypto death scam. Sounds like a terrible band name, but it's the truth. And this is happening to Jonathan the tortoise, who is older than any person in your life. He's 193 years old. And to put that in perspective, the US Civil War was raging like just after he was born. He was born before the US Civil War. and he was beloved by turtle and tortoise fanatics all around the world, dead and still living. So yesterday he was declared dead, sadly, RIP to Jonathan the Tortoise, by an account impersonating his veterinarian. So his vet, this account, it's just wild. Anyway, it went viral, and the BBC and USA Today published it as fact. Tributes naturally poured in for the oldest known land animal. But then the real veterinarian, the real vet by the name of Joe Hollins, he posted from his actual account, "It is not true. The person purporting to be me is asking for crypto donations, and it is a con." The island's governor personally walked outside to check on the tortoise and confirmed, quelle surprise, that Jonathan is still alive. The fake account has been traced to Brazil. Now, Jonathan the tortoise is blind from cataracts. He has lost his sense of smell, probably due to COVID. I'm just kidding. He still has a vigorous appetite, though, and was reportedly asleep for 11 hours during the entire global panic about his death. He is fine, but the crypto scammers continue to do what they do best. And we have to be more and more vigilant about this kind of thing, and more vigilant about the fact that the news that we read and consume on a daily basis can be countered at a moment's notice. The BBC and USA Today both reported on this death as if it were true, and then the con man in this used it to raise money for crypto donations. What's the Bitcoin lens to this? Well, it's that if we are going to live in a world with increasing numbers of fake images, of AI-generated slop and AI-generated impersonation, then we need ways to be able to prove our identity. We need ways to be able to sign posts and comments online. And for that, we're going to need Nostr. We're going to use Bitcoin. It is very, very hard to impersonate someone it's borderline impossible to impersonate someone on Nostr in this way, because all you need is an official signing from the private keys of that official account. So I know that Nostr is effectively a dead platform, dead social media space, and yet it would have not led to a crypto scam from the world's oldest tortoise taking place. We also need better journalism from the likes of the BBC and the USA Today. The BBC should not be reporting on the fact that this tortoise has died, particularly on a day like April Fool's Day. Our wits should really be about us when it comes to April Fool's Day and these kind of things. But ultimately, I was attending an event in Budapest last week that I hosted called the BLTR, so bottom left, top right event in Hungary, Budapest. And I watched a talk from a crypto scam investigator. So she used to work with Chainalysis and did all the Chainalysis tools. And she said that while blockchain forensics and blockchain scamming and AI generated images and videos to impersonate people and to then access funds, they were perhaps less than 20% of her cases. More than 50% were romance scams. So the most likely way of you losing money right now in the crypto space is someone preying on your loneliness. It's someone purporting to be your friend and then eventually reaching out for money. It's people tugging on your heartstrings and your emotional sort of sentiment as a human in order to get your money. And that is what we saw with this tortoise death scam. This land animal, the oldest on the earth right now, that death would be emotional. It's a bit like someone reporting the death of David Attenborough, right? God forbid, he is going to die at some point, sure. But, that'll be a big day of national mourning for lots of people in the UK and lots of people around the world. So if there were a hack of his account saying David Attenborough is dead, to support his funeral, to support his case, to support environmental concerns all around the world, please send Monero to this address. You could see that happening, couldn't you? And it would work because it, again, pulls on the heartstrings in a way that these crypto scammers know is effective. So let this be a lesson that not everything you read online, even from official BBC accounts, is true. And that if crypto scammers are after you, typically the way they're going to do it is through your humanity, through your emotions. Let that be a lesson to you. I mean, we've seen this, the French crypto wrench attacks, you know, over the past 3 months now in France. It's always been about ransoming someone for money. They haven't hacked into people's private keys. They haven't found really intricate, sophisticated ways of accessing your funds. They've simply said, I know you're married to this person. I know you have this kid or this brother. I'm going to ransom or kidnap them and ransom them for your money. It shows that, yeah, while we do have these incredible AI tools, these incredibly sophisticated ways of communicating and using technology online, it comes down to really primitive attack vectors when it comes to sort of the more effective ones. So yeah, something to learn from, and something to sort of wake us up about the importance of Bitcoin and crypto private security. Okay, I'm going to dive into the chat now, as there is a little bit of conversation, debate taking place just now. Full screen myself and check out the comments from Milos. Milos says, moving from Trezor just because you saw a YouTube video just proves how your understanding is. Oh, Milos, that's a little bit unfair. Like, his choice to do that is also a way of him improving his security, because he knew that he would learn more about that in the process. I take your point though, that you watch a YouTube video and you don't trust the company anymore. Yeah, that's not right. But if he felt empowered after it, then who are we to judge, right? Meanwhile, Plastic shares that he back in 2019 he moved from a Trezor 1 to a Cold Card Mark III. Best security decision in his life. That and staying anonymous online. So well done for doing that as well, Plastic. Yeah, Cold Card is very good. Trezor also very, very good. Milos shares as well that Trezor is still a great hardware wallet, and no amount of FUD coming from YouTube creators will change that. But sheeple without critical thinking get influenced too easily. Hey, we're all sheeple at some point with regards to some processes in our online lives. And watching these videos, it's entertainment. Like, number one, it's always entertainment first. And then whether or not we need to take action based off of these videos, that's up to the user, of course. But if someone wants to move from Trezor, good for them. But they should also know that Trezor is not being hacked anytime soon. And Trezor is run by really, really smart cookies who continue to deliver on excellent hardware devices. Not sponsored. I just support those guys. Thank you for your comments, Milos. Thank you for your comments, Plastic. And I am going to have to round up the show just now, guys, because it is almost the top of the hour. And we have another show taking place on Roxham. Who's up next to replace myself? Oh, is it Susie today? Are we going to the London office? Let's see. It's Thursday. So, oh no, we have a gap of an hour. And then it's Nolan, my friend Nolan, broadcasting from somewhere tropical, I imagine. So stick around on Roxham TV. Make sure you are following Roxham TV on all the necessary socials, because in an hour's time, we'll be hosting Nolan with his program, his show called The Great Awakening. So if you like your news told by a Bitcoiner with a conspiratorial lens, then stick around from Nolan. He'll be on in 1 hour's time. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Do hit the like button. Nice to see you again, Plastic. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you guys on Monday. Oh, no, not on Monday. I'll see you guys on Tuesday at 11 a.m., where we may or may not have a special guest, courtesy of Roxham TV. Thanks again, everyone. Have a fantastic day. Make sure your Bitcoin security is high. You've got a smile on your face. And I hope that you are the bubble in a glass of champagne. Go charm someone. Have a fantastic day. Do what you love and save in Bitcoin. I'm ending the stream. The